Hi everyone, Victoria Alai here from EveryoneCounts.World. Glad you're all here. I want to welcome you to our interview with Mark Eberhart, a passionate disability advocate and an accomplished professional who has navigated the complexities of living and working with a serious disability. Mark's journey is one of resilience, adaptability, and relentless pursuit of inclusion and support for individuals with disabilities in the workplace. Today, we delve into his personal experiences, the challenges he faced daily, and his vision for a more inclusive and supportive work environment for everyone. Join us as we explore Mark's inspiring story and his invaluable insights on disability awareness and advocacy. Let's get started. Mark, I'm super excited to hear about what your experience is around disabilities, how you're helping people to advocate, how it's impacted you. So whatever you'd like to share today, I'd be excited to hear maybe about a little about your background to start, or who you are, what you do, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Sure. My name's Mark Eberhart. I am a left leg above knee amputee. In fact, I'll get up so people can even see
Oh,
what I'm
great.
talking about here. So you can
Great.
see
Oh, nice.
my leg and my blade. So I have a blade that I added a mountain bike tire to the bottom for additional traction. Anyway, I lost the leg to cancer in 2006. Before that, it was about a 10-year period. I had cancer 3 times. And during that 10 years, I lost the leg. You could say I lost pieces of it, really, with every time I had the cancer in 96, 2003, and then in 06, I just opted for a full amputation. Yeah, growing up, I was like anyone else, regular kid. I was very active, always running around, always doing something. Skateboarder, BMX, ice hockey, whatever. I was very active. When I got into high school, I started running competitively, and I ended up being quite good at it, at distance running. So much so that when I went to college at Maryland, I was on the varsity track and cross country team. It's a Division I. Very competitive and very hard. That was at least 3 hours a day of just working out, going on my workout schedule. So yeah, in those days, the idea of disability never even crossed my mind. In fact, I think my mentality at that time was I compared myself to just the best, right? Like I thought, how fast am I? How fast is the fastest person, right? Like my mentality was I should only be comparing myself to the best, the fastest. And in my mind, the best meant the fastest. It meant the people with the record. And that was how I thought about my physical self. I thought about my surroundings in that respect. It never occurred to me really that there was any, I don't know, when I thought about Paralympic sports and things like that, to me, it was in a way, I don't know, like watching the second graders playing soccer or whatever. Like it wasn't the most elite thing. So why would I find that interesting?
Interesting. So let
Of
me ask you,
course.
this happened after your surgery, right? That you were thinking about the Paralympics, or is this before you
Oh,
kind
this
of,
is long before
oh,
about
so this is before you actually,
yeah, as a able-bodied individual, and an elite athlete,
right.
that was my mentality. My mentality was only compare myself and to whatever can meet my physical level or higher, right?
Right.
And I didn't realize how ignorant I was. I was very ignorant.
You didn't know what you didn't know. It sounds like, yeah.
Yeah. And truth be told, one of the things that people ask me a lot, do you run? Do you still run? And yeah, I'll go out on the occasional run, but I don't run, not like I
Right.
used to. First off, I only have one knee left, and I'm going to take care of it.
Yes.
I'm not going to pound it into the ground trying to prove anything to someone. I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I don't need to go out and run 100 miles just to say I did it. And another thing I realized, because I did run for a bit, there was a period of a few years where I did do a lot of running. And I found that there was a lot of people that were inspired, and I led a running club when I was on Fridays when I was at Treasury Department, and some other things I've done. But I guess I just felt that I'll tell you a story.
Okay.
So there's a local shoe store where you buy running supplies, and I went there one day to go look at running shoes. And I'm in there, and a guy walks in who's maybe about 10 years younger than me, and he starts talking to the sales associate, and he's talking about how fast he is, how great he is, how awesome he is, how his times are coming down, and it made me think, do I want to keep surrounding myself with people who are at that point in their life where I was? Like, that's, and not to say that I couldn't show someone like that there's more to be understood, but I felt that maybe it would be more helpful for me to find environments where I can find the people that are maybe less than where I'm at or at where I'm at, and help to inspire and show what could be done. I don't know if that comes across right or not.
That makes sense. One of the things
But
I'm hearing is that back when you were in college and running semi-professionally, back then you were looking at your times, just like this gentleman that came into the store. And so what would you say your mindset was at that time? Do you think you had your identity attached to, or your value as a human being attached to your running?
100%,
Tell me more.
110%, my value was attached to my body. I
Mm.
imagined that my body just buck naked, right? What I had was God given and could not be taken away.
Interesting. I know some women too that feel this way as we're younger and then you get older. And too, there are different ways of experiencing what you're talking about. But wow. Yeah, it never occurred to you. You just thought it was a given.
And yeah, I identified that I had been given a gift that was not, that I owned. It belonged to me, and it did not belong to anyone else. And it was mine. It was mine to throw away or to do something with. But the way I felt was like, you can take everything I have, but you can't take this.
Right. You can't take my physical abilities that I was given.
You can't take my mental ability. And I've always said this, that a lot of when we choose to do something, obviously there's limitations, right? There are situations where it just is impossible to do something. But for me, I generally say that whatever activity I'm doing, it's 49% physical, it's 51% mental.
Oh,
So
interesting.
even in my best running days, it was 51% mental. It's a mental game. You have to mentally get yourself over that last push. And that is what separates like a lot of the kind of like elite athletes, even at Paralympics and all of these people I've gotten to know, they all have that mental acumen to push themselves.
So what you're saying is it's 51% mental and 49% physical. And that's the
Yes.
difference between the people that are really excelling at it and enjoying it and the people that are struggling or whatever to just get their body in shape.
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of that has also been fermented in the way when I lost my leg, I had a surgery that kind of went wrong when in 2003 they were saving my leg for the second time. And I was actually against the idea, and I got talked into it by doctors and all the people around me to keep my leg. I was really in a headspace where I wanted to get rid of it and just move on with my life. But I had a lot of people around me convince me that, oh, half a leg or a quarter of a leg is better than no leg and all this stuff. And I can tell you with hindsight, they were wrong. Um,
That was a question I was going to ask you because you made that conscious decision.
yeah. For about 2 years, I lived with a leg that had been cut up, and they basically took out a lot of tissue and skin grafts and everything else. And when they did the surgery, they basically fully just tore my leg apart and put it back together. The mistake that they made was that they didn't anesthetize the right leg, and they put the wrong leg to sleep. And
Oh,
throughout the whole surgery, my brain basically recorded the trauma and got
oh
stuck in that moment.
no.
And when I woke up from the surgery, it was bad. It was really bad. And anyway, long story short, I have severe phantom limb pain where I feel my foot getting basically cut up and all that nonstop. And it never stops. But so for me, the mental acrobatics that I've had to learn are very helpful. They had me on OxyContin for about 3 years, I would say. And I was taking pretty good amount of it. But I felt that it was an unhealthy medication. I felt there was something wrong with it.
Mm.
And so by 2006, when I had the amputation done, I basically just quit it cold turkey.
What
And
was that like? Was that easy to do, or did you
no,
find?
it's not easy. It's that mental thing that comes in. Your body becomes dependent on a medication like that. And I quit it cold turkey actually 3 times, twice
Oh,
to baseline myself, and then once to actually do it. The first time I quit cold turkey, I was at home. The second 2 times I was in a clinical setting, and you're basically hallucinating for 2 or 3 days. You're completely out of your mind,
my.
and yeah, it's no joke. Like yeah. And I am very thankful that I know that I've been gifted the ability to, like, I'm sure it's a genetic thing that I can just do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect it to be something that everyone can do. I don't, because I know it's not. That stuff has got claws in you. It
Mm-hmm.
just so happened that when I got the medication, it wasn't coded. I guess later on they started coding it because people were cutting up the tablets and sniffing them and stuff like that. And the ones I had were uncoded. And the smell of the medication, it smells like acidic metal, like a horrible smell. And every time I opened the bottle, it made my stomach turn.
Oh,
And so I was thankful that I had that like reaction, because one of the things I learned, I helped someone quit smoking one time.
oh, another
And
tough one.
yeah, and the cessation, the way that I was able to help this person quit smoking is I learned the trick about, you take a mason jar and you fill it halfway with water. And every time this person had smoked a cigarette, I had them put it out in the mason jar, and we kept it on a windowsill and in the sun. And so whenever they had, I'm just serious, this is what they'd do. And so every time they actually had a craving for a cigarette, they had to first go open the mason jar and take a big whiff. And
I have this method.
doing that for about
Wow.
2 weeks, and they would get that hit of nicotine by sniffing it, but it made them sick. Then it
Ha.
trained their brain to not want cigarettes anymore. But this
Wow.
was similar to that, in that the OxyContin made me sick to my stomach just smelling it. And I mentally was like, I'd rather be in some pain than be on this. And I did some therapy, and so cognitive therapy, as well
Right.
as some hypnotherapy, which actually really did help me. And I would say with that, I was able to mentally control some of the pain by 15-20%. And recently I've been doing some other treatments, looking into other modalities like transcranial magnetic stimulation and electroacupuncture, and having maybe some luck with that too. But the long story short, I've slowly just reduced the opioids. I still take a small amount, but nothing like I was taking then. But I just decided I'd rather be living with the pain and learn how to have a conversation and just be myself.
What I'm hearing is that one of the aspects of being resilient to this kind of an experience is that you don't give up. You just keep going. You keep finding, okay, here's another technique or a tool that I can try. And do you think that has helped you over the years through this whole experience?
Yeah, I grew up fairly resilient, and thankfully I was pretty hardened and resilient by the time this happened. I prepared myself to, done research and so forth. Yeah, in terms of losing the leg, I think no amount of planning and preparation could fully prepare me for what lay ahead. And so I'll give you an example. One of the things that was really hard was just getting equipment, getting the durable medical goods, getting
Right.
insurance to pay for things. I
Oh,
had to fight.
interesting.
I had to fight really hard just to get. So in order to for me to learn to walk properly, I really needed a microprocessor knee, which is a computerized knee, and my insurance was unwilling to pay for it. One of the things I actually recommend to new amputees is to go to one of the larger companies like Hanger, Hanger. They're like the Walmart of prosthetics. They're cheap, and they're going to be able to get you what you need at a reasonable price, but they're not necessarily that great for like long-term care, because a lot of their prosthetists are just residents, and they will be around for a year and then they go off to someplace else. For getting started, they were great. But having that microprocessor knee made all the difference, because if I had a regular hydraulic knee, I don't know if I ever would have really gotten my brain to trust the device. So I got a microprocessor knee. I wore that for a while until I was very confident. And I probably wore that for a good 4 or 5 years. And eventually I had the running foot I have on. I found myself putting it on every afternoon to go coach soccer or go to scouts, or I put it on Fridays to wear it on the weekend. And one day I was just like, what am I doing? This blade is just it's more practical. I prefer it, because the microprocessor knee, I couldn't get wet. I couldn't,
Oh, okay. So these are things to think about if you're dealing with a
yeah.
disability, even if it's something else like blindness or something like that. These are issues that come up that you didn't consider, it involves
Yeah.
getting the right equipment and fighting for that and finding ways to do it through different
Well,
means. And
what I found is that, so for example, in the prosthetic community, there are surgeries that you can do so you don't have to get like a carbon fiber socket. They can actually put like a screw at the end of your stump, and then you
ah,
can attach the knee straight to that. I have friends that did that. The problem is, if you're highly active like I am, then you could end up having a catastrophic accident. And
ah,
I don't even need to explain like what it would be like if a titanium rod in your femur were to split open. And
right.
right, like
I
I do
see what you're
snowboarding, I
saying.
do a lot of things, and if I were to fall wrong and that metal rod that goes through my femur were to bend, and I didn't
So
think about
so
it,
you're
but
talking about quality of life and realistic ability to think it through. Now, did you think
yeah.
through all these things at the time when you decided which kind of a socket to get and everything before your surgery? Or
Oh,
did you luck out that you got something that really matched what your active lifestyle was going to be?
that surgery was not, that was still very experimental, and at the time when I got my amputation done, and they don't even recommend it to brand new, no, they don't generally give that to brand new amputees. It because it's the kind of thing that like is irreversible. For me, one thing I did do is, knowing that I was going to be highly active, I knew that there was no question I was going to be highly active. So when I did my amputation, I actually created my own team of doctors, my own dream team.
Ah,
I found the best orthopedic oncologist in the Baltimore, Washington area, scheduled him for the first surgery, and I was at Georgetown University Medical Center, Georgetown Hospital. I had him do the amputation and cut away all the cancer. And then a couple days later, I had another doctor come in and do the tie off to actually make the stump. And he specializes in doing that. He's a wound care specialist. And one of the things that he's known for is making really good stumps. So I told him that I wanted a stump that would allow me to be very active. And so my stump has a special shape where my quad muscles were brought down and crossed over and tied behind my stump, so I can fire. I can actually flex my quad muscles and hamstrings.
oh, it's
And
like,
it gives me more leverage and just more follow through power when I'm kayaking or bicycling or snowboarding or running or whatever, hiking, whatever I'm doing. Just gives me a little bit more kind of extra power.
I want to go back to some mental parts of what was going on during those choices and picking your dream team of your doctors and your support and everything. Is that a lot of people, myself included, could get to something like this. You're not expecting it. You're finally accepting it. It's a major life change. This feeling of I'm just going to trust whoever's around me, or I'm going to just go with it, but not really be proactive, detached enough from the procedure to be able to think about what kind of a quality of life do I want after this. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. I've run into that. And it's because of a lot of your advice with my mom, for instance, when she had cancer. And you basically said, listen, you need to ask around. You need to go meet people. You need to ask direct questions. If they're not answering you directly, then that's not good. If they're just telling you, oh, we'll take care of you, so to speak,
Mm-hmm.
run 10 miles
Right.
from that. And, and we actually ended up in a situation where with her breast cancer, they were going to take out all these lymph nodes. And we went to another place, and they said, no, we're just going to take out one called the sentinel node. And had she had all those lymph nodes taken out, there would have been major perspiration issues down the line.
Yep.
So these are the types of things that I think you have as a uniqueness, is that for some reason you were able to stand back and say, wait a minute, I'm accepting this to the point where I'm going to say, how is this going to really work for me and the people around
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
Wow. So mentally, do you think that, was there something that you remember, a point in time or something where you're like, you know what, I'm going to make this decision to plan for my future?
Yes. And it was when I first had the cancer in 1996, and Kaiser Permanente would not allow me to go to Johns Hopkins. My cancer was very rare. It's a synovial soft tissue sarcoma. So synovial is connective tissue. It was a connective tissue cancer, highly malignant, but very rare. And when I asked them, what oncologist are you going to send me to that has a protocol for this? And they said, we don't have a protocol. We don't have a single oncologist that has a protocol for your cancer. And I said, there's one at Johns Hopkins. Can you please send me there? And they wouldn't do it. And so my choices got very limited. I basically found a clinical trial at NIH, and I just made myself an NIH guinea pig, which was maybe the less bad of two bad decisions. I don't know.
Right.
They randomized my name. I literally had to pull a piece of paper out of a fishbowl, and the piece of paper basically was like, it was going to have yes or no on it. Yes meant that they were going to give me chemo. No, they would not give me chemo.
Wow.
But they would give me chemo if they saw signs of the cancer coming back. I got the no, so they didn't give me chemo. I got radiation and surgery. 5 years I followed up with NIH, getting scans and poked and prodded and MRIs and nuclear medicine, you name it. And I'll never forget, it was August of 2001. My oncologist at NIH pats me on the back and he says, Mark, you're cured.
Oh, wow.
That's exactly what he said to me.
Wow.
I started feeling pain in my knee again, just like months later. And the doctor they sent me to started gaslighting me, telling me that it couldn't be cancer, it's impossible.
Mm.
2 years went by before they finally did a biopsy.
Oh.
And by then it had grown. But my point being is, when I look back at I got my hands on all those scans, all that 5 years of study, and I had two independent radiologists look at it, and they said to me that there were clear signs, like they showed me where it was obvious that the cancer was coming back. But NIH just lied to me. And going through a situation like that, a lot of people were like, we need to sue them, and aren't you going to
Right.
fight? And I really made a choice that I could spend the rest of my life just walking backwards, shaking my fist at the past, all the things, all the wrongs, or I could just turn around and look for the open doors of opportunity and just move ahead. And that's what I did. And it really, I think, fermented in me a mentality that I'm going to own this and not let others tell me what is and what isn't reality. And yeah.
That's amazing. So it sounds to me like that major decision right there was one of the biggest quality of life decisions you've made in this whole process. Is, I'm not going to be mad at people right now. I'm not going to try to fight it. I'm going to try to go forward and have the best life I can have given the situation. And it doesn't sound like it was easy decision.
No, I've had barriers, let's say, and both physical, mental, and it's the kind of thing that I guess it doesn't really ever end. Like, it's every day I have to wake up, and I think for anyone with a disability, there's your life before the disability and the life after.
Mm.
I did have some in between years where, I'll be honest, the couple years before I lost a leg, I've always felt were worse, because I was living in this limbo. I just felt that the cancer was going to come back. I felt like I was doing it to placate other people. I wasn't happy with the result. I couldn't be active anymore because my leg was now so fragile that if I did anything, I could break my
Oh,
shin.
wow. And that's such a big part of your life, being active. So tell
And
me a little bit about the people that, and you don't have to say who they were, but it sounds like there were people who loved you, or people that were professional and they were just trying to Do you think they were projecting what they would do onto you as far as what they think would make a higher quality of life?
Yeah, I can safely say this. There were people that have been by my side through all of this, and without them, I wouldn't be here. I really don't think I'd be alive.
Right.
And I know that those people meant nothing but good. And to be honest, if I had amputated the leg at that time, would I be now looking back and thinking, what if I had tried to save it? What if,
Oh, interesting. You don't have to wonder.
yeah,
That's another good point, which is something I've thought about in my life too, is despite the crooked path, it's like I am where I am in the happiest place I can imagine right now,
yeah.
partly due to some of those lessons.
Sometimes we need to jump into the abyss so that we can answer the question, what's there?
Wow, that's pretty powerful. I think that's true. And so you were saying your perception of yourself changed after your disability. Can you say anything about that that might reach any other listeners that might either be going into something like this or that's struggled with it for years? And
I've really had to learn how to be much more patient, not just with the people around me, but most importantly with myself. I think it's when gaining a disability, the mind over matter becomes much more important. One's mental health and ability to feel whole, it's pretty easy when everything's going well. But when an individual is dealing with constant pain all day
mhm,
long,
mhm.
a constant reminder that I have to get up every morning and put that leg on no matter what, when I got to walk on it and I got to use it. And I'll be out and about somewhere and a bolt falls loose on it and I have to fix that. But mentally, I have to be much more malleable. I've had to learn how to roll with the punches and not let the obstacles disappoint or affect me mentally because there are a lot of them. And with a disability, there's always going to be little things that are problematic. A lot of it's like down to logistics, right? Do I have this piece of equipment that I need at this time of day, at this location? I have pain medication that I have to squirrel away at my office, in the car, and I keep in my pocket that I have downstairs, upstairs, so that I don't end up without it. And there's a lot to consider, and it can be very taxing mentally. And I think that was very taxing in the beginning for me, was getting used to all of this extra stimuli, things to remember, things that I can forget, the pain, the nonstop. It's an uninvited guest in my home that will not leave.
Wow. And a lot of people might see the leg, but they don't understand that uninvited guest part, that you have all this invisible difficulty going on that people can't see based on the fact that you're not screaming in pain all the time. Yeah. That it's just something that the average person at work probably doesn't even know you're going through.
No, I just hide it. I'm in pain right now. But
Right.
I imagine the pain as a little like capuchin monkey on my shoulder with a wooden spoon just hitting me on the head and in like 3/4 time and 4/4 time and then going into 1/4, like he's like doing different,
To get your
like John,
attention.
yeah, like John Bonham on the drums, just completely. And it's that mental part of overcoming and not letting that affect my quality of life, not letting that affect me and who I am. Because that really is, in the end, that is the most important thing we have. And that was a realization that came to me many years ago during all of this, was that it's not my physical self that's most important. It's my mental state. My mental being is the most, it's like the last, it's the keeper. It's the last thing we have. And I've been volunteering with the Wounded Warrior program
Tell me more about the Wounded Warrior
for.
Project.
So when I lost my leg, a good buddy of mine that I grew up with, two buddies of mine, had always been trying to get me into whitewater kayaking, and it's a bit of a steep curve in terms of investment. You're buying a boat, a neoprene skirt, and everything. It can be thousands of dollars to get into the sport, and I wasn't even sure if I was going to like it. And I was always like, no, not me. And I lost the leg, and I really couldn't mountain bike anymore or do trail running anymore. a lot of the things that I would do in the outdoors were just rollerblade. I did long distance rollerblading. I'd go out
Oh,
and do 30 miles on my rollerblades. I
wow.
loved doing that. That was over. So I really needed something to get outdoors again. And I was like, you know what? I'll try it. Yeah, I have this picture of me like bald in the middle of doing chemo, and I'm out on a lake in a wetsuit standing next to a kayak. And my buddy, we legitimately tried like a couple of times. We went out and he was trying to teach me to roll and teach me to do stuff. And we were just getting nowhere. And I went on Google and I was like, is there an organization in the Washington, D.C. area that could teach an amputee how to kayak? And lo and behold, there was. They were
Huh.
connected with the Wounded Warrior program. They had just gotten started. They were just starting, like they had been around for a year or two, and they were very small, local operation, and called Team River Runner. And at the time, they were meeting in the Potomac a couple nights a week and working out of Walter Reed Army Medical Center in D.C. And I started going there on Tuesday nights. They taught me to roll. I was a government employee, so they were like, that's close enough. You're missing your leg. Come out and join us. So I started going on Tuesday nights to the therapy pool at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, and they taught me to roll and got me into a kayak and taking me out on rivers and all kinds of fun stuff.
How did you feel when that started to happen and you could start to feel that it was working in the
Oh, the kayaking, or
right, the kayaking?
it was a great feeling to be in the outdoors and be traveling through the outdoors under my own power.
Oh, wow.
That I really, that to me, that's a really important thing. I really like being in the outdoors under my own power. And it was something that I really missed. And it was like, it was amazing. It was liberating. And I was learning something new. I was meeting new people and
Mm.
making new friends. Within a few months, I was building sockets to put into the boats.
So you
And I
designed
started,
these, Mark, or
yeah, I started, we basically, I had met another amputee from Canada who had a socket like mounted in his boat, like a plastic socket. And so he would take his leg off and he was kayaking with this socket,
interesting.
and he showed it to me. And then I thought, man, I want that. But I didn't have it because, again, it was like in the early, I was like a brand new amputee. I didn't have a running foot. I didn't have this. I didn't have, there was all this stuff I wanted, but I couldn't get any of it because I'm just a civilian. Remember, I wasn't wounded in war or anything. If I wanted something, I had to pay for it. And so I thought, I really want something. So I went out to Home Depot and bought some 30-gallon trash cans, and then went home and started carving them up, and pretty soon realized how I could curl them up and bolt them and then bolt it into the boat. And I had a socket.
Wow.
Once I had solved it for me, I started solving it for all the soldiers that we had that weren't going out because they were amputees. And pretty soon we had like probably about a half dozen guys that were amputees going out regularly on rivers. And then, yeah, within about a year or two, we decided to go national. And so I rebuilt the website using a content management system called Drupal. Anyway, it was a PHP type thing. And I rebuilt the site so we could have chapters and calendars
Oh,
and signups and everything.
and
And
this is for the Wounded Warrior.
for Team River Runner,
Oh, Team
yeah.
River
And
Runner
so now,
specifically.
yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah, Team River Runner specifically, which is part of the Wounded Warrior program, just one of many organizations that get money from the Wounded Warrior program. But we then created chapters, and we have chapters all over the country now.
Oh, amazing. So you actually found purpose through
Oh,
trying
yeah,
to get
yeah,
help yourself or trying to find some meaning yourself and some companionship with some other guys
yep,
and changing lives. It sounds
yeah. And that during that same first couple of years, I also started trying to figure out how to snowboard again. And it was during that time that I just went to a local ski resort up in Pennsylvania and just had my wife film me one day. And I just spent all day trying to figure out how to get down this hill. And I was wearing a knee that I was wearing a microprocessor knee. It was a computerized knee that I wasn't supposed to get wet or anything like that. And there's like this slushy snow, I remember.
Oh, no.
But by the end of the day, I was making it down the bunny slope again, and I was snowboarding again.
How
I
did
had
that
her film
feel?
me. Oh, it was amazing. Just because I didn't know if I could do it. I didn't even know if it was possible to snowboard if you're missing a leg above the knee. I hadn't seen anyone do it and I didn't know anyone. And so I just decided that I'm going to try it. And so I posted a video on YouTube, and that turned out to be the first video of an amputee, any amputee, like snowboarding ever on YouTube.
Wow.
So I had a lot of people reach out to me from around the world, like being really inspired that they too could do it. And within about a year, I had then worked with another buddy of mine out in Oregon, out in Washington State, I had him make a prototype he had a prototype knee that he was using for downhill mountain biking. And I had him make me a version of it and send it out. He was convinced that he couldn't make a business out of it, and I thought otherwise. I started wearing it at biking events around Walter Reed, got interviewed by the Pentagon News Channel. Anyway, in August 2008, I had him fly out, and we got together. I had all the top military brass from Walter Reed, the prosthetic clinic, everyone there. We had a whole thing. I had him come out. He was injured, so he couldn't demo it, so I put the leg on my mountain bike, and out front of the Walter Reed Army Medical Center with all this top brass, military brass, I said, I'm going to get on my mountain bike, and I'm missing my knee, right? And I said, I'm going to stand up and I'm going to ride uphill standing, which at that point was impossible. Like, it wasn't something that had ever been done. Now, my buddy was
Wow.
doing it. He and I were the only people that were doing it, basically. He's a former Paralympic skier. So anyway, I say, I'm going to come down the hill and I'm going to bunny hop. I'm going to pull the bike up, jump, and then I'm going to ride no-handed through the colonnade.
Oh my.
And I remember one of the nurses in the group, she looks at me and she says, that's impossible. And I just thought it was so great because I was like, thank you for that. I was like, why do you think I'm here doing this? Anyway, so I did everything I said I was going to do. And I ride up the hill and come down, jump, and I'm going through the colonnade no-handed. And I remember I made it to the end of the colonnade, and I'm riding no-handed because the leg had, well, I could go into all the, it was called the Bartlett tendon. But I made it through the colonnade, and I was coming back, and they just all came running at me, like just possessed. And they were like, where do we get this thing? Where do we get it? And I was like, I pointed to my buddy Brian. I'm like, talk to him. And he's been selling and refining and making that knee ever since.
Wow.
And that knee has gone on to be given to dozens of veterans. And what I liked about it more than anything was the fact that as a civilian, like I mentioned, it can be really expensive to get these kinds of things. So this particular sports knee, when it's shipped, it comes in a mode that's a walking leg. So when you receive it, the box, it meets all of the Medicare
Oh.
and insurance codes to be a walking knee. Now, mind you, it's not the best walking knee,
But
but it works.
technically it
Yeah.
passes.
Yes. And so medical insurance will pay for it.
Wow.
And you get it. And I had medical insurance pay for mine. And then I got it and take it out of the box. And there's a little instruction manual in there. It's okay. Now move this cam this way and unbolt this and move that here. And hey, guess what? You've got a downhill mountain biking, or in my case, a snowboarding knee. I use it a lot for snowboarding.
This is something else. And I guess I'm here listening to your story, and I've heard some of it before, but nothing like this today of hearing all of it in order and how things happen and evolved. And it's amazing to me that many people that haven't experienced something like you have, losing a limb, have not actually achieved as much. Do you know what I mean? It's you didn't let this stop you. In other words, you basically were like, I'm going to keep going. I'm meeting these guys. We're going to do these fun things, and it's actually going to turn into a business. This is pretty amazing. Do you have an engineering background? Is that your background, or were you just,
No,
that's what I was getting, is
I
that
have,
you
I have a
trusted
4 year,
yourself?
yeah, I have a 4 year art degree. I was imaging and digital arts. I was the first graduate from the University of Maryland system with a 4 year imaging and digital arts kind of web and interactive media degree. I was the first one.
Wow.
I took graduate classes. I took grad classes for 2 years as an undergrad. And they said if I passed the classes with like a certain GPA, I can't remember, it was like 3.0 or something, then they would give me the first degree in undergraduate BA in imaging digital arts. But yeah, so that's it. I have a 4 year art degree. But I like the engineering. Like, I appreciate what it can do. And to me, it's just a means to an end. There's a problem. Is there a way to overcome it? Is there something I can do? Can I talk to someone else who's maybe got something that is close to overcoming this? And so, yeah, I've had a lot of that. So, for example, back in this past winter, I got a custom dry suit made for me. So that's so that I can go
Oh,
kayaking, and in the wintertime when it's very cold, I can get in my boat and be protected. If I swim in the water and the water's 30 some degrees, I'll be okay. So I had this custom suit made, and they had made one for amputees before, but the way they had done it, they had basically just cut the leg off and that was it. And then they had put a special like seal over the stump or something. And I said, look, I want something that I can put on and wear while I have my leg on. And then when I get to the water, I want to take my leg off and then seal it up. And then I won't have to worry about changing, because again, it goes back to the logistics. The logistics of something like that for the average person is, oh, they put on the dry suit and when they're home, and they don't take it off until they get back home. But for someone like me, I have to deal with the situation of I got to take my leg off before I get in the water. I'm certainly not going to
right.
go kayaking with my leg on, because if I have to swim, I'll die. So
Oh my
the
goodness.
logistics is I take my leg off and I take it apart and I stow it in my kayak.
Hmm.
Whenever I go whitewater kayaking or sea kayaking, that's what I do. So if I have my leg on and then I get down to the edge of the water, I shouldn't have to get all undressed to get because it defeats the purpose.
I
So
see
I had
what
them
you're
actually,
saying.
yeah. So I had them cut a slit in the side and had them put a custom zipper on there. So basically, I have a zipper on the side that I can open it, stick my leg through, walk, get down there, take the leg off, zip it up, and I can get in. And so stuff like that is an example of, I spent probably 4 or 5 hours at their facility up in Pennsylvania one day, just getting undressed and getting into my kayak and putting the suit on and taking it off. And then we would
Uh,
slowly cut. But and I think for disability, with any kind of disability, it's common that the situation is different for everyone, I should say. What accommodates one person may not accommodate someone else. And
so
what accommodates me may not accommodate someone else. Just like my friend who had it's called osteointegration, where they put the rod into the femur and attach the knee straight to the rod. It's not going to work for me, mostly because I'd probably break it. But then again, the socket design doesn't work for that individual because they have other things they want to do in life. They want the practicality of not dealing with a socket.
and again, that goes back to his quality of life that he's looking at. And so
Right.
I hear another principle here, which is that, again, it's an individual situation. It's not something that you can manufacture. You can get some of the things, it sounds like, that you can share amongst one another. Once you go down the rabbit hole of doing it one way with a socket versus doing it with the femur rod or whatever, it sounds like then you might even find yourself amongst different people that,
Oh,
you know what I mean,
that's
socially.
that's a good point you bring that up, because I didn't even talk about that. When I had my cancer for the first, like, from 96 until I'd say I lost the leg, so for about 10 years there, I mostly identified as a cancer survivor. That became like my next
Oh.
identity, right?
Oh,
That
after
became something that I really identified with. And so I still had my leg, but I was now a cancer survivor who was still running. I was still biking. I was still doing a lot of things. I was just doing them with missing 2.5 hamstring tendons, missing some calf muscle, and having had my leg irradiated. And so I was still running like a 5:30 mile, and
Wow.
and
Wow.
I was a team captain for what it was the flagship fundraiser for the American Cancer Society for many years was an event called the Relay for Life.
I've heard of it.
And I was a team captain. I had a team called the Lifeguards, and we were at like multiple locations in the Baltimore, Washington area. We had multiple teams at different locations, and we raised tens of thousands of dollars over I'd say between 98 and 2008. We raised a lot of money, and we changed the Relay for Life forever at a couple of these venues. At all the venues we went to, we would show up, and the first year it was always super sleepy and barely any people on the track in the middle of the night. And we would show up with foghorns and
Ah.
costumes and dance and yeah, and like dance music and DJ equipment. And we would make a ruckus all night long. And every location we did that at, the first year, people would be like really upset. Like, one year, the first year, we had a fraternity brother of mine who brought his trumpet, and he brought a bugle, and he played reveille every hour on the hour to
Oh,
keep. And we were like, there was like 15 or 20 of us. And so we were trying to keep spirits up. And I had
right.
my team, we always focused, all of our lifeguard teams, we focused on running for 24 hours. It was a 24-hour event.
Wow.
So we
Wow.
would run a relay. And so we were really trying to keep each other, the spirits up and everything. I actually got interviewed. I think there might be some of this, I don't know, online somewhere, but Howard County, Maryland, I got interviewed by their like historical society for having changed that event and
Wow.
made it into something. Within a couple of years, it went from having a few dozen, under 100 people, to like hundreds of people. And they eventually had their own DJs, radio station. Like, it got so big that we couldn't even camp out on the infield anymore. And it was a dance, it was like all night long, and catered food, everyone. And all of a sudden, teenagers were, because
It was
once we
a
started doing that, the teenagers had a lot of fun, and they just wanted to stay there all night. And so that was a great, but I really identified as a cancer survivor. What happened though was, when I lost the leg, I was still obviously a cancer survivor, but by that time the Relay for Life was starting to get gutted. They got gutted by some other organizations that were for profit.
oh,
Unfortunately, some for profit organizations just saw money signs and came swooping in. And
it happens.
um, yeah, one of the biggest perpetrators, unfortunately, was the Susan J. Komen Foundation.
Mm,
They just gutted the Relay for Life. It really hurt. It really was sad to watch it die off, because it was such a beautiful event. I loved how inclusive it was. We would
right.
have people out there in their hospital beds getting like chemo treatment, and we'd be
Oh,
wheeling them around
wow.
the track. And you're not going to see
Just to,
that at some cheesy 10K race, or people are getting covered in paint and all, or some mutter race or whatever. I don't see those as inclusive, honestly. And that's something that changed about me. My mentality changed. Remember I mentioned earlier how I really just thought about myself and thought about who's better than me. My mentality began to change, where I realized there's so much more to be had. I can learn so much more, and I can just gain so much more by looking at how can I include others? How can we include? And that mindset, I think, really set the path for me, and in many ways prepared me too for becoming an amputee. But just as a cancer survivor, I began really thinking that way. And we built a rickshaw out of like spare bicycle parts and everything. We had a lawn chair mounted on the top of it, and we would give we would do free rides. And so we would say, free rides, donations accepted. and
Relay for life,
and
you mean?
at the Relay for Life, yeah. And we would make hundreds of dollars doing that, because a lot of the kids that were getting treatments would be there. And we really focused on getting the kids. We wanted the children to get onto
Oh,
we would
this
give them
brings
rides
tears
on the
to my eyes.
rickshaw,
Yeah.
and we would run them around the track. And we would give them, I had a megaphone that we would give them, and like sparklers and all this stuff. And it was like a real sight.
Well,
And so these kids would just have the best time of their life doing their around the track, like shouting out and just nonsense and fun. And it was great. And the parents, so often we'd have a parent come up to us and say, I haven't seen my kid
oh,
laugh or smile like that in more than a year. And here, and they like give us like $50, and we're like, thank you. But to me, that's what the whole money was all for. One purpose: it was for the Cancer Society and the American Cancer Society. And that's what was, I loved it. I really absolutely loved that event. But when I lost the leg, that event, like I said, was beginning to really get like affected very negatively by a lot of the other stuff that was popping up. And I was going to support groups for amputees, especially. And I have to say that I really, like, my mindset, the things I needed to overcome and the problems were so prescient, like they were immediate. I had immediate needs and problems I had to overcome. I had physical challenges and issues that I had to deal with now. It was no longer, oh, I had cancer and but I'm just recovering, or this and that. It was like, no, I have this physical disability now for the rest of my life. How do I deal with it? How do I run again? How do I bike again? How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I deal with the pain? I had all these questions and all these things I needed to solve. And I would go to the support groups, and it was a lot of people that was like a complaint fest, really. It was like I'd go in there,
interesting.
and most of the people I met were just like, I'll never walk again on the, and it was like really, it was like really
So
depressing.
it wasn't support. I was
And
going to ask you how the support
no,
groups.
I was the support. Like I found myself being a brand new amputee who was now supporting people who had been amputees for years, convincing them that life could be better. And I thought to myself, I need to take care of myself. I'm not going to be that person for any, I'm not going to be able to be a good father. I can't be a good husband. I can't be there for the people around me. I can't set an example if I don't fix myself first. And I can't fix myself if I'm focused on other people's problems. And I made a decision that I need to surround myself with people that are focused on moving ahead, not walking through life backwards, shaking their fist at the past. I'm not going to do it. I got plenty of things I can complain about, but if I turn around and just stare at the past, that's all I'm ever going to see. And I'm going to have my back towards every opportunity. And so I turned around and said, you know what? What's out there? What can I do next? Who can I talk to? Who can I work with? And I'm still like that, honestly. And I really started when I got involved with the Wounded Warrior program. I really began identifying with the soldiers that were coming back.
Ah.
I really identified with the situations they were dealing with, and what I was dealing with were very similar. We were having to learn how to cope, and the trauma that I went through, I found out, was just as bad, if not worse, than the trauma most of these veterans I was helping and volunteering with had gone through. I was really discounting what I had gone through. And I did get eventually diagnosed with PTSD like many times over,
Join
but
the club.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that I don't have that defining me, right? It's certainly a part of my story and it's a portion of what makes me who I am, but I don't let it define what I think I might be capable of. Sorry, I'm talking a lot.
No, I'm actually soaking it in. I'm really appreciating everything you're saying is very high impact, honestly, to me. And I think it comes from a place of having been there. And what's neat is it sounds like unexpectedly, just because you were looking for some extra support around the kayaking, you ended up in the situation where you fell into kind of like that band of brothers, comrade feeling of,
Oh yeah,
even though you had not been in
absolutely.
the military, you had been through trauma and major
Yeah.
trauma, and we're dealing with a lot of the same issues. And yet it sounds like some of these men, possibly women that you ran
Yep.
into, were also wanting to look forward instead of backwards. It's like that story about the ugly ducklings and the swans. You feel out of place until you get to your tribe. And then you're there and
Mm-hmm.
it's, wow, this is where I want to spend my time. And your life could have taken a different turn had you decided to stay and just support these people that had mostly complaints and everything. That's of service. But what you're doing now is, it's like you're committed to life and you're committed to quality
Yeah,
of life and you want to be
I,
around
I,
people.
yeah, and I think I would say it's if someone's willing, if I meet someone, they basically say, "Hey, I want to look forward. I want to move forward. I want to move ahead. I don't care about the past. I don't want to be thinking about it. I just want to move forward. Let's move forward." I'll be like, "That's right. Then let's go." I'm going to put my hand out and say, "Let's go," because that's what I do. If on the other hand, if the person's like on the fence, yeah, I can still work with that. But if the person is just spiteful with negativity and has learned nothing in this world but to blame others and be mad at the world because of what their lot in life, I'm sorry, but we are not going to be spending any time together because I cannot let myself slide down that abyss. I won't do it. I've been down there. I've jumped into there because I had to redefine who I was multiple times. And it was hard, especially the amputation. I thought the pain was going to go away when I cut the foot off.
Right.
I was shocked when I woke up from the surgery, and that was when I realized that it was in my head the whole time. It was in my brain. My brain was just stuck on repeat. Like I
Oh.
said, the guest, the uninvited guest that will not leave your home, and you just have to learn how to live with them.
Yeah, that sounds like it's a whole story in itself. Just the
Yeah,
uninvited guest that will not leave your home. And it's every day and it's all the time.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
yet you made these choices too. You could have gone down the road of, I'm just going to drink this problem away, or I'm going to keep taking this medication that's really dulling my life out. And it just sounds like that you've made some really tough choices that have brought you a lot closer to life, so to speak, but it also leaves you with some of this uninvited guest that is just,
I think it's acceptance. Once I stopped fighting it, and by that, in many ways, it was expecting that it's going to get better, expecting that one day it's going to go away. I just said, look, all right, you're here. Okay, you're there. I got it. But guess what? It doesn't mean that you're going to lead the way. You're a follower. You're not, you got to follow me. You are not going to be in control.
wow. That brings tears to my eyes. Just the mental observer fortitude that it took to make that decision. But I bet that a lot of people in various walks of life that don't even have a disability could learn something about that as well. Because a lot of us have these old beliefs or old thoughts or old realities that try to take charge. And what you're saying is that when the chips are down, when your back's against the wall, you have to make these decisions about how your life is going to go. And that's what you did. And that's what you continue to do.
And what I was saying in the beginning about the mental state, it has become so much more important for me in these years as with the pain and as an amputee. When something breaks on my foot and I'm frustrated because now I can't walk right, or I have to not do something because I got to now go fix this thing, and or it's I'm in pain and the pain can be pretty severe at times and it's waking me up from my sleep. I might have a dream that I've had this. I'll have a dream of my leg getting cut off the chainsaw, and I wake up and it feels like a car battery being attached to my left foot, which isn't there. And you can't sleep. And then I got to go to work the next day, and I got to try and be a coherent and smiling person. And it's not always easy. And I work very hard to keep an even keel. And a lot of that is just the mental acumen to center myself and always, it's like exercise, it's a balance act. And I'm just keeping that balance, just keeping that needle right where it needs to be so it's not in one direction too far or the other. And it's something that I hadn't really learned to do until I had to deal with this.
And I could talk to you for hours because we haven't even talked about the workplace. Would you be open to doing another video sometime about workplace? And
Sure. Oh,
because
yeah.
this is really close to my heart, what you've been talking about today. And I think that some people will probably identify it. Let me ask you about your future outlook as far as you, it sounds like you're into technology and everything. Might be watching some of these things that are happening in health and AI and robotics and different things like that. Do you see anything on the horizon that can help with some of these pain that you're having mentally, but it's not physical? Things like that. Do you see anything's bubbling up?
There is one actually. And I'm currently doing what I guess would be considered my own kind of clinical trial, a personal clinical trial of my own right now. Since the beginning of May, I've been going to a local clinic to get transcranial magnetic stimulation. Now, I was able to find about four scientific papers online. It's like a miniature MRI machine that they put over your head, and it feels like someone's tapping when it's activated. It sends pulses into the brain, basically. I had read four different papers that I'd found on NIH and some other locations about it's called TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, TMS, yeah, that had done it for phantom limb pain. And basically, the general treatment is you go in, you go for 35 days in a row, and you get a session every day. The thing is, in the United States, it's only approved for OCD and depression.
Oh, again, it has
Uh,
to do with the insurance and the, oh my gosh.
so I'm doing a kind of like a little bit of an off script type thing. So I did a full treatment over the winter. I did a 35-day treatment, and it reduced my phantom limb pain by about 20%,
Wow.
which reduced my intake of opioids by about half. Now, I have a prescription for hydromorphone that I take basically, and I take 4 milligram tablets, and if I have really severe pain or it's really bad, I might take 1 or 2 of those.
Mhm.
But generally, I'll go through one prescription of that like per month. 3 weeks after my first 35-day whatever TMS treatment in like January of this year, about 3 weeks after it ended, the pain came back, and it came back like a freight train.
Wow.
Like
You didn't realize what you had
my,
lost, huh?
I didn't realize the delta that I had reduced it by. It was bad, and it took
Oh.
me about a week to get readjusted to the fact that it was back. And so then it occurred to me, what if the phantom limb pain could be treated? What if the TMS could be done in such a way that it was done less as like a solid 35-day thing and more of a maintenance schedule?
Interesting. Change the
Yep.
frequency.
Yes. And a couple of the papers I had read, they actually said that even one treatment had made a difference. And I worked with my doctor and I said, look, I want to start up again, but this time we're going to change it. And I said, we're going to do it once every 2 weeks. And since the 1st of May, I've been doing it once every 2 weeks. And my opioid intake has been cut by more than half.
Oh, that almost brings tears to my eyes to hear that.
So the pain, basically the central nervous pain that I have that's in my head, has been cut significantly enough to reduce my opioid intake by half, more than half. And
Wow.
so I'm wondering what possibilities there are here for this type of a treatment for anyone trying to overcome opioid addiction.
Oh, wow. Interesting. Really
And it's one of the
interesting.
reasons why I'm doing this. I've been keeping track of where my pain schedule is and the amount of opioids I take. And I'm sharing this information with my doctor. And I'm really hoping that if nothing else, what I'm doing here can help provide some insight into alternatives for opioid addiction and anyone who is trying to reduce their intake.
So there's some unexpected results that might also come out of just your experimentation to try to
Yeah.
decrease your pain in a different way. And also, it doesn't sound like the opioids are really that effective. It's more, they help, but
They can be pretty effective.
yeah.
But they're not, but there are times where I'll take them and then it's just pointless. Like the pain can get so bad that no amount of opioids will touch it. So you just have to ride it out. And ever since I started this treatment, it used to be that I would have that kind of situation, like getting woken up in the middle of the night with severe, like you've seen in like movies where they're like torturing someone with a car battery attaching to their feet, that kind
Right.
of feeling,
Right.
very severe.
Right.
And I would get that few times a month. And I can literally count on one hand the number of times I've had to, or even it's been just a couple times I've dealt with that since I started doing this in May. And I've had people say to me, you need to go in once a week or go in twice a week. And I said, no, I really want to see where this goes. I've lived with this pain for so many years that I can just step back and stare at it, and that's fine. I want to give this at least 6 months. I want to see how this works and if it can actually do something, because I tend to think there's going to be a cumulative effect to it. And I also believe that, as anyone with a disability can probably attest, when it comes down to logistics, again, just having to remember this and remember that and get this and get that and then travel with this and travel with that. And oh, don't forget that. Oh, I forgot my handicap placard in the other car. And there's only so many doctor's appointments I want to go to. I don't want to be living my life. I don't want to be stuck around the house going to a doctor appointment every week. What if I want to go to Europe, or I want to go?
Quality of life.
Yeah, exactly. When I finish this whole round of doing this, my next thing I'm going to really experiment with is the electroacupuncture. See where that goes. But
Oh.
I'm separating the two so that I can really experiment on myself, create some kind of corpus of data that currently doesn't exist.
And you could sit around and wait for these types of clinical trials to happen, or you can say, wait a minute, I want to try this and work with the people that you can and get your dream team together And it's not just for the surgery and getting there before and after and that initial first 6 months after it. It's actually now that you're
Yeah.
continuing. Who am I going to surround myself with? And I've been hearing some kind of first principles of dealing with disability, trauma, PTSD, and everything, is that one of the things is inclusiveness, with being of service to people. It sounds like that brings you a lot of joy as well. And can you think, if there's somebody out there right now who's in that stage that was maybe the darkest for you during after the amputation, or maybe during some of these times, what do you think that you would tell people if they're going through something that seems untenable, that seems like it's never going to end? And what would you tell somebody if they were thinking about what's in the rearview mirror, what they've lost and everything, and they're stuck there?
It's hard because it seems intractable, like it seems impossible when you're in that situation. It can be so hard that you just don't see a way forward, or that the obstacles and potential obstacles, and most importantly, the unknown obstacles, are of such quantity that you can't even imagine how anything could change or how you could possibly move forward. And you just feel yourself sliding backwards. And I think that's where it's important to find hope. And what I mean by finding hope is find something to care about, find something to help you improve yourself and to just care about. Maybe it's finishing a book, maybe it's counting the cars that drive by, but something, because sometimes when things are so bad, I usually tell people this, that there were times in normal life, we're usually counting the months that go by. We're never kind of counting the weeks, we're counting the days. Some days are pretty rough and we're counting the hours. Some hours are really bad and we're counting the minutes. And I can say with certainty that there were times when I was counting the seconds, days, weeks, where I'm just counting the seconds.
Wow.
And when you're living second to second, that's just, it's so hard. It's so hard because you can't focus. You can't think long term. You can't think the bigger picture. You can't get your head around your own existence. And I think the first real lifeline that I would grab onto when I was in situations like that was just something to care about. And for me, it was usually doing research. One day I want to, and just thinking, what would it take to do that? And it was a lot of just being online and looking for stuff. But like, it could be anything. But it's something to give yourself a lifeline of hope. It's to help pull you through that second to second or that minute to minute. And for me, again, it was because I was super active and I want to be active again. I would say it was just like online research, and just research, find people that are going to give me answers, find things that'll answer the question, how can I snowboard again? How can I get outdoors again? How can I run again? How can I walk again? How can I get over this pain? How can I? And certainly some of those will be dead ends and red herrings. But I think finding something to give hope and just keep searching, right? Not putting all your eggs in one basket for that.
Right.
And I think just finding hope in others, finding hope in magazine articles, finding hope in news stories, finding hope that someone did something, right? Like someone had something similar to this and they overcame it. Okay, maybe I can too. Not everyone needs to climb Mount Everest and swim the ocean, cross the Atlantic, paddle themselves, and swim across the Pacific. There's so much stuff that's out there that's just out. It's impressive, but at the same time, I think the average person just, they want to live their life and they want to feel that they have some control over who they are. And finding hope again was a big piece of that for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing your experience around that, being willing to dip back into what it felt like and what shifted for you. Definitely reminds me of Viktor Frankl in the concentration camp. And what kept him going was he kept thinking about what he was going to tell his students when he was a professor later. And that's, it's just amazing. So anyway, I really appreciate you taking so much time to share your personal experience as well as your hope, your sense of freedom you're getting today, and the quality of life that you've been able to achieve so far, and how you're not giving up yet. Like one of my friends used to tell me, you think things are good now, this is the tip of the iceberg of how good things can be if I just keep going and don't give up. And then before you know it, you're looking back and saying, wow, 50% less opioids and less episodes of extreme pain. And it's just like trusting it, just trusting your process and not giving up, and kind of befriending the situation in order to also be able to say, how can we move the needle on this? And that gives you something to care about too, I'm sure, as well as
Yep.
the kayaking and the family. And so where can people follow you, Mark? Because I know there are going to be people that like, do you have a certain
It's
website
like
or
I've had
something?
a lot of people ask that, and I'm like, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. I've got my own personal Mark Eberhart. I've got some videos I put on YouTube on the past. You can always search YouTube for amputee snowboarder and then filter by the oldest video, and
I'll put a
you'll
link. I'll
find.
find it and put a link. I noticed you did a
Yeah.
nice, like recently, 3 years ago, reasonable accommodation video, which
Yes.
is really outstanding, high quality. So I'll put a link to that as well.
Yeah. Oh
And then
yeah.
next
Please.
time, especially, I want to talk to you about the workplace
Yes.
because I think that
That's
probably
the
has a
whole.
lot to do
Yeah.
with.
That was. Yeah, it was a long. It's a long story, and it
Okay,
was
I can't wait. We'll be
pretty
back
rough.
here again. But anyway, thank you so much. And I
Thank
look
you.
forward to more conversations and hearing about some of the results from some of your experimentations. And thank you for sharing what you can to inspire others, and not
Thank
just who
you.
are having a disability. So thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Victoria.